Amanda Camm is the member for Whitsunday, and she has insight as to how this plays out both in our cities and in our rural and regional areas. Amanda, have we got you on the other end of the line? Oh,
you
wonderful.
Do. Thanks for having me,
Thank you very
Amanda.
much. Thanks for joining me on the program tonight. I really appreciate your time. Thanks. You've been relentless in pursuing the safety of Queensland's at-risk children in the shadow ministry. I want to commend you for that, but paint a picture for us of the scale of the problem we're dealing with. How many children are we talking about? How many are there in that, I guess, end-of-the-line residential care, and how many are in foster care?
Well, Amanda, we have around 11,600 children in the care of child safety across Queensland. Of that, wow. 42% roughly are in kinship care. We have about 6,000 foster care families, which is fantastic, but I'll speak to that a little bit later. But we have 1,100 children that are in the residential care program, if you like. Of that, 256 children are under the age of 10, and about 50% of those 1,100 children have a disability. So it's quite a significant number. And recently we saw an announcement by the Minister about a review into residential care after we saw one of the largest players, Church of Christ, which announced publicly that it would be leaving that service, which is very concerning. Very concerning to all Queenslanders. I've spent the last 2.5 years travelling the breadth of this state, whether it be holding spotlight meetings in Cairns, Townsville, the Gold Coast, Toowoomba. I've had foster carers reach out all over Queensland who want to speak to me about their experience, but also about the priorities that they see, and many service providers that see the focus has been lost on that of the child and what's in the best interest of the child. And instead, we have what I think is a government that hides behind the Privacy Act within the child protection legislation that's actually there to protect children. And instead, it's been protecting the failing ministers that we've seen over the course of the last 8 years. We are now on the 4th child safety minister under this Palaszczuk Labor government. That demonstrates to me that they are overseeing a system that's failing, and that they really don't have this as the priority that it should be.
We too regularly, Amanda, see shocking cases of child abuse, whether it's little Mason Lee dying with excruciating internal injuries, or Darcy and Chloe Conley, whose ice-addicted mother neglected them so badly it led to their death after being left in a hot car. And there are just so many more that deserve to be acknowledged. But these are in many ways symptoms of a social rot that goes much deeper. What needs to change to equip child safety to be able to prevent these awful tragedies?
Well, and you outline, those tragedies, Mason Jet Lee, the Connolly girls, tragic to see that occurred in our state and under a state government's watch. We've seen coronial inquiries, we've seen many reviews, and recently we've seen also the judgments made in the Connolly case. In each and every case, there are identified gaps in the system. There are failings in the system. They have been highlighted time and time again. The government is now spending roughly around $2 billion annually in child safety. This is a significant investment.
Gosh, that's a lot.
But it's not going where it needs to go. It's a lot of money, and yet we see high attrition rates, high vacancy rates, we see burnout. And listening to your guest previously, she is correct. The high caseloads was something the opposition highlighted as well, after comparing us to other states where we've seen caseloads in excess of 25 being undertaken by some CSOs, and they just do not have enough time in the day to make sure that they are carrying out the necessary case management that they need to. Now, majority of people that are out there working in this sector, the vast majority are there because they actually want to help our vulnerable children, and they want to see them get the support that they need, and also the families. But when we see the consistent failings time and time again in the same areas not being addressed, that demonstrates there's a lack of accountability when it comes, I think, to the minister, and also the policy settings that we're seeing that clearly are not achieving the outcomes, which is an improvement in numbers. On that figure of the amount of children known to child safety, over 11,600, that's almost a 3% increase in the same time this time last year. So what the government is doing is not working. The early interventions with families, which points to service delivery, whether that be our health system or child services, Queensland Health, at those early days when, you know, it goes right back to even prenatal care for mothers. So all of the services that are out there to help identify these gaps and the early interventions and preventions clearly aren't working. There's clearly failings. And when we see over 1,100 children in residential care where they are not getting the therapeutic needs and support that they have, there is no discipline. They don't have to have structure. In many cases, some of these kids are being released out at 9 o'clock in the morning with no money, no food, no way in which to support themselves, and are returning at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with the revolving door of youth supervision.
What could possibly go wrong?
And that oh, absolutely. And how does that replace a loving and caring family? How does that replace the boundaries that I know certainly teenagers desperately may not like, but they definitely need? And we do see a correlation between those interactions with child safety into youth justice. And so we've seen, you know, what's really nearly a failed generation of young people that have been under the care of the state government. The state government is the parent of these children.
You're quite right, Amanda. I'm sorry I have to leave it there. Definitely plenty more for us to explore in future. Keep up the great work. Definitely lots of kids are counting on you there.